Welcome back, everybody, to the Little Less Fear podcast. Today, I would love to welcome Dr. Emma Smith, all the way from Nashville, Tennessee. Rock and roll. Dr. Emma Smith is a psychotherapist specializing in sexual trauma, religious trauma, and identity-related shame. She works with survivors and LGBTQ plus clients to help them heal from deeply ingrained beliefs around the body, intimacy, and belonging, and to rebuild self-trust and emotional safety. Her work centers on supporting people to move from shame into authenticity, connection, and a more grounded sense of self. I love this. Welcome to a Little Less Fear podcast. So nice to meet you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Dr. Lino. It is so amazing to be here with you.
It's amazing to be here with you too. So this is really amazing. So that the viewers, the watchers, listeners know, we kind of talked backstage a little bit before, and something that I just discovered from Dr. Emma Smith, aka Dr. Smith, aka Dr. Emma, aka Emma, is that she comes from a conservative background, and so I'm wondering and I'm questioning, how did you decide to do something that liberates people from that type of energy?
Yeah, that is a great question. I think, if I really am honest about it, I think one of the things is that, I grew up in New Jersey, which right outside of New York. And so I had exposure to a lot of different cultures and a lot of different ways of thinking. And my parents were conservative and Catholic, and we went to church, and I went to Catholic school, and I went to Catholic college, and all of that. And at the same time, I can't remember being discouraged from exploring, right? And reading whatever it was I wanted to read. And, uh, my parents were in education. So, like, they were teachers. And so they were um, very much into exposing me to the arts and just different people. New Jersey is a pretty diverse place. And so, there was that. I think that there's also this piece of, my parents were the only ones in my family to get divorced. And so then there's this huge Italian Catholic family, and I'm the one kid who has to split time. And so I was a little bit of an outsider. And I think that actually started to break open. I had to look and find my people elsewhere. And then my mom was an alcoholic. And so there was that layer on top of it. And growing up with a mom who couldn't fully be present for me and trying to figure that out and navigate that. And at some point, I think it was in college, I got into therapy. And there was just this wonderful human who was like, okay, but now it's your turn, right? You get to decide what you're going to do with this now. And I thought that that was really lovely. And like, I thought, oh, okay. And, I was a philosophy major in college as well.
I love
And
philosophy.
so, yeah, I was an existential philosophy major and like,
What? I love that. Okay.
yes,
Sorry.
yeah. So it was just like this whole unfolding. And so I think that while, living in Nashville now, I realize that when I say conservative upbringing, that should have an asterisk next to it that says conservative for the Mid-Atlantic region, right?
Well, yes,
Because
yes.
it's not the same down here. And I think that's something that is really interesting too when I talk to people across different parts of the country. Our country is so big. I don't think people realize it's so big and it's so diverse, and words mean different things in different places, even like conservative, right? I'm getting a whole new
No,
lesson in that
that's
down
true.
here. Mhm.
So maybe can we define what you mean by conservative then in this case?
Yeah. So the way that I grew up, I mean, it was, family first. And because it was Catholic, it was like, don't get pregnant before you get married, right?
Right.
Uh, get married. Um, you know, I had family members who were part of the LGBT community beforehand, and so like that wasn't a big deal when I came out as bi. but also it was, I'm a child of the 80s. And so,
Oh,
yeah, right. And so like, it was the height of the AIDS crisis too
sure
that was
was.
going on when I was growing up. And we're right outside of New York, which is like the epicenter of it. So there was, I think, some of that fear going on. But I think that the piece that was conservative was like it was like the back in the day, like the Reagan conservatives who were like anti-drug and get off my lawn kind of
Hmm.
thing, and like that kind of stuff. Somehow my parents managed to raise me without a concept of hell, which is really kind of funny. I came home from school one day and I was very upset because our my great aunt had just died. And the nuns had told me that you had to pray souls out of purgatory. And I was just picturing Aunt Jenny just stuck in this middle space. She can't get to heaven where she's supposed to be because obviously anybody in my family is supposed to go to heaven, right? Like my 7-year-old self. And I was a very sensitive kid and I was just like completely distraught. And my mother, probably I caught her at like a weird moment. She goes, "This is so brilliant." She goes, "Oh, no, 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 no. No, purgatory's for other people. You don't have to worry about that. That's fine. Aunt Jenny's fine. She's already in heaven. It's great." Like, that's it. And so I was like, "Oh, purgatory's for other people. Okay, I don't have to worry about that." And just kind of like threw it to the wind. And apparently hell went with it. Like, that was it. So I never, so like when people talk about like Catholic, Catholic guilt or Catholic shame, f-
Yes.
I understand what they mean. And also, I'm like, oh, maybe I wasn't really raised Catholic because I got a real, like, light and creatively cherry-picked version of it in, all of the mythology, big on the saints, right?
Right.
Um, Big on the saints, big on the holidays, big on family, less so with the like, brimstone and that kind of and the punishment stuff. So it was pretty interesting.
That is really interesting. Is this what inspired you to work with clients that have got that are dealing with religious trauma?
No, actually. So what happened is, I grow up and I decided that I wanted to work with trauma as I had a partner back in the day who was in the military. And when he came back from Iraq, um, he did not come back the
The
same.
same.
And I was always nerdy and always a person who was like, this is figure outable. And so by through helping him, I fell in love with psychology. And I was a high school English teacher before I made the leap into
Wow.
mental health. Yeah, yeah. So what ended up happening was that I was really interested in that. He and I ended up, I had known him since I was 7. We were in second grade together.
Wow.
We are still friends, but we did not stay in a romantic partnership. I ended up marrying a Marine because apparently I have a type, and we'll just, I don't know. And I ended up in this military culture. And right as I was getting ready to do my internship, my practicum and internship, we get stationed in the middle of nowhere, Texas, where there is no military base. And you know that meme from like the pawn shop guys where somebody's like, I need this. And the guy is on the counter and they're like, the best I can do is, and it's
No, I don't
something.
know that one.
Oh my gosh, I'll have to send it to you. Hopefully,
Okay.
your listeners know what I'm talking about. But it's like, well, the best I can do is this like cheap, Temu knockoff, right? Like, so I'm scrambling to try to find a placement because I wanted to work with trauma. I knew I wanted to work with trauma. And they said, well, there's a rape crisis center here, and maybe you can go there. And I thought, great, I'll go do this. And I started there. And what ended up happening is because it was Texas, I started having people come in talking about self-blame, but it had this religious component to it.
I see.
And they don't train you for that as a baby hatchling counselor in
Mm,
graduate school.
right.
And so I was like, what is this? Also, what is this? Because this is not my lived experience. This is my first time living in like the deep South. And I'm hearing, whole communities, not even just the survivor, but sometimes the people who were around them in those faith communities reinforcing these horrific beliefs of self-blame and shame and taking ownership. And I was like, oh, okay, we got to do something about this.
You,
And
you
so,
started noticing a pattern.
oh my gosh, yes. And I was really shocked by it. But again, I think it's my personality. I'm from Jersey, right? Like we're a little feisty. And so, when you see a problem, you're like, all right, I got this. Let's go. And so I just started looking at and reading anything I could get my hands on that had to do with religious trauma. And back in like 2012, 2013, there actually wasn't a lot. We weren't talking the same way as we are now about that. So a lot of it was cobbled together from different resources back then.
Dr. Emma, what were some of those thoughts that those clients were having? Just so that I get an understanding of some of those like false beliefs or shameful thoughts that were reoccurring in their mind
Yeah.
because of this religious trauma.
Oh gosh, the biggest one that comes to mind is, there's a reason for everything, right? Or it's all in God's plan. Or, you know, if I had been more devout, more faithful, if I had been living the way that I was supposed to be living and not out dressed a certain way or with a certain group of people, this wouldn't have happened to me.
I see. Okay. So a
Like
lot of
those,
self-blame. Like there's no way out of it. This is my fault, and that's pretty much it.
yeah, or even further, like this is cosmically predetermined, right? This is in God's plan. I'm supposed to be raped so I can get to what? And they never really had an end for that, but they did have well, it's just all in his plan. And I thought that plan sucks. Like we need no, we're not doing that. We're not doing that one.
How do we
So
work through that? If somebody says this was, part of God's plan, what I went through, and so that's their way of trying to their nervous system trying to accept it, correct? If I can accept that this was God's plan, then I it was meant to happen, and I shouldn't work through it. I guess I'm trying to understand their meaning behind that as well.
yeah, I think, everybody's different, but I think it was when I think sexual trauma in particular is one of those traumas that hits so deep. It is at the core of who you are, right? And it takes something, it steals something from you that, depending on who you were when it happened, you never even got to explore it. You didn't even know it was there necessarily. And so this thing
Yeah,
is taken. And so it's such a stacked violation and it's incredibly disempowering. And so I think actually that a lot of that self blame is somebody trying to grasp and pull back their autonomy and say, no, I am in control of my life, right? Or somebody is in control, somebody is behind this. And, and I can understand that and I can empathize with that. The problem is that when we do that, we let the perpetrator off the hook,
that's true. Yes.
right? And healing comes from, we can help build back your autonomy and your capital S sense of self without having you take on the blame that this other person chose to do something
Hmm.
to you, right?
So in
It,
sense, the client or the patient getting their power back.
mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And this is where the existentialism really helped, right? where the philosophy that I had spent all this time, and people say, "What are you ever going to do with a philosophy degree?" And I'm like, I have used this degree so much, so much. So, one of the things was that, existentialism, it kind of gets a bad rap, right? Because everybody thinks about how depressing it is. And the truth is that existentialism says, you know, nothing has inherent meaning. You have to assign the meaning, right? So, like a sexual assault, for
Right. Yeah.
example, right? Anything. A sexual assault, it absolutely, you have the power to say, this is my defining moment. You also
Hmm.
have the power to say, this isn't my defining moment. This is a moment in my life, but this isn't my moment. And just having that choice offered
Right.
back to the client was really helpful in having them say, "Oh, I don't have. You mean I don't have to make this the hallmark of, the legacy of my life? No. I mean, unless you want to, but like I'm pretty sure you're going to do some really cool things. And so maybe this isn't the one. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe it'll be a transition point. Maybe it'll be something that you decided to look back on and say, "Oh, hey, in retrospect, this kind of helped me get here." But we don't have to say it was your fault or that it had to happen. You made something of your life, with what you got. We don't who is it? Randy Pausch has this great quote where he says, it's not about the cards you're dealt, it's how you play the hand.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, and just hypothetically here, like I understand what you're saying as far as the client or the patient getting their power back, but just for philosophically speaking, if inherently the experiences that we have are ultimately really based on the meaning that we give it, why wouldn't it be healing for a patient or a client to say that what I'd gone through, the trauma I'd gone through, the meaning that I give it is that I was meant to go through this because of. What if that is the meaning they change it to? I guess I'm just trying to figure out where does it become unhealthy to think that way versus healthy to think that way.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody says, I was meant to go through this, it is not my place to challenge them on that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. If they are getting up and they are going to work and they feel good about who they are and they are in a place of empowerment and standing on top of their own world,
Mm-hmm.
then okay, like that works for you. Okay. Right. Like that's fine. The people that I was working with in the crisis center, that wasn't working for them.
That makes sense.
Right.
Right,
That
because
wasn't,
when it actually starts to control every part of your life and you can believe something, but yet everything else is kind of falling apart, there must be something within that belief that's not healing. But if there's something within that belief that's healing all other parts of your life, whether it's intimacy, finance, business, profession, marriage, relationships, if those things are flourishing with your new belief, then you know that you are grounded in a more profound truth that what you had experienced was something you were meant to. But if the opposite's happening, most likely there's some type of disempowerment going on.
yes, yes. And so you can have people have that belief eventually, I think, but when it's
Mm.
superimposed and it's, well, what does it mean if it was supposed to happen to you? And I think that if you listen to somebody who is like far down the road of their life and in a positive and healthy place, they'll say, well, it means I got to write this book and I got to do these things and I got to help other people. If you ask somebody who is in the beginning of that and they have that belief, they say things like, endorsing suicidality, right? Or self harm or
Mhm.
something where it's a collapsing of the self in on itself, right?
Yes, right.
And so I think that's the difference. So it's actually not necessarily that like the belief is the problem, it's the context in which that belief is um is located and what is happening to it. And what's happening around it because of it being there. So time plus belief equals a certain outcome, I think.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And so, in discovering this, and you're able to guide your clients or help some of those clients
Mhm.
with the religious trauma, when did you become, or what made you become passionate about working overall with ingrained beliefs around body intimacy, belonging, and trust?
Yeah, so it was so interesting to pivot into sex therapy because the trauma world at the time, it is getting better now. Sometimes people get their feelings hurt when I say this. It is getting better. And when I started, it was not. Okay. What happened was the trauma world was like, PTSD, and we need to help people, and we're going to change the way they think, and we're going to change their behaviors, and they're going to be able to get out of bed, and they're going to get to go to work. And I think I don't know, is it because I'm from New Jersey? Is it because I'm a Scorpio? Is it because I was working with sexual trauma? Who knows? I was like, yeah, but what about sex? And they're like, ooh, well,
Yeah, they didn't want to go there. Tiptoe.
right. And so in hearing that, was a little disappointed. And then, that thing that I've said that happens when I find a barrier,
You
right?
need to figure it out, right?
I need to figure this out. And I thought, why is it, if we were going to say, okay, you did not ask for this, something terrible happened to you that is not your fault, and somebody else made a choice, and now because of that, you don't get to ever experience this wonderful thing that is part of our human lived experience in a pleasurable way. Well, that's not okay.
Right.
This is not bonus content that only a certain, level of subscriber gets to have access to, and like the rest of you shoulder shrug. So I was on the journey to try to figure this out, and when the pandemic hit and everybody else was doing their sourdough, right? And
Yeah.
like the TikTok dances, I'm a terrible baker and I can't dance. So I went back to graduate school
That's
and
awesome.
and that's when I got my PhD, and I also got my education for becoming a certified sex therapist. And so I was able to say, okay, we're going to carry this. I'm going to take all of my trauma background, and now we're going to apply sex therapy skills and, that lens to this work. And you can have access to this too, if you want. Again, I'm never going to argue with somebody if they're like, listen, this happened to me, and I don't actually ever want to experience anything sexual ever again. It's not my job to say that's not true or that's wrong. Like, asexuality is real, right? But you should be able to have the choice. And if you want it, here I am.
I
Right.
love that.
And yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. And so within becoming a certified sex therapist, that's where you learned about ingrained people false beliefs that they have about their body and belonging and rebuilding trust and emotional safety. It makes sense
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that
I
all
mean,
comes together.
I think so. I really do believe so. I mean, this has been it has been, you know, 25 years, right? If we start from when I was an undergrad all the way to present, of just this intersection, like this beautiful intersection that I could not have predicted, right?
Yeah, I can see it. What a beautiful journey, really.
Yeah. So it's been lovely.
And which part of let's go back, let's go into sex therapy. I'm kind
Yeah,
of curious about
sure.
something. So which part of this therapeutic work that you do with clients within sex therapy do you find the most rewarding for yourself? Like, where do you actually feel are the biggest holdbacks or setbacks with people where where you're able to kind of fine tune and help them open up so that they become more authentic with their being, with their self?
Yeah, absolutely. So before I answer that question, let me go back and explain to folks what sex therapy is.
Good,
So,
good, good, great.
okay,
Yeah.
because about
Great
once a
idea.
month,
Yeah.
because
What
about once
is
a
sex
month,
therapy? Because someone could be like, "What is sex therapy? Tantric practice? Like, what do you do in sex therapy?" Right?
yes,
Okay,
right.
yes.
Because about once a month, I will get an email from someone who doesn't know what sex therapy is. And then I have to figure out a way to write back and be like, oh, no, 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 no. I'm not even a hugger. Like,
Right.
right. So,
But that
um,
makes sense. Yes.
yes. So sex therapy is psychotherapy, right? And you can utilize a lot of the different modalities that are out there. So I still use my existential integrative approach to sex therapy. I still use imago therapy styles with my couples, but it has the sex therapy lens. And really, what is happening is we have just done such a terrible job educating people about their own bodies. And we have, this is where the religious trauma often comes in. We have talked about pleasure and desire as if they are dirty, bad, terrible things that your soul can be at stake if you indulge in them.
Mhm.
And so a lot of what sex therapy is about teaching people some of the basics about their body and about arousal and desire and how their bodies respond and what those messages mean, right? Desire is I want, and pleasure is I like,
Right.
right? And,
Yes.
it's not scary. Those are two things, right? And so sex therapy is a lot about that. And then the biggest challenge that I run into, to actually answer your question, the biggest challenge that I see people coming in with is they don't have the language or the practice talking about their own sexual experience. And there's also so many different kinds of people that we asexualize, right? So, if I said, I want you to think of a sexual being,
Hmm.
right? That person is probably, let's see, of a certain age, right? Maybe they're a certain gender. They meet probably a visual aesthetic of some sort, probably determined by the dominant culture. They are probably a weight that society has deemed is desirable. They are probably an able bodied person, whatever that might mean in your head right now, right? But people who have different ages, different mobilities, right? Different genders all have a sexual component to them, or at least can have a sexual component to
Right.
them. And so it's really important, like when I was working with the trans community, one of the things that we were talking about with my couples, you would have one person who was going through transition, one person who was fairly gender stable, right? And maybe identified as cisgender, and they would say, "Well, is it okay for us to have sex? Like how do we do this?" Because nobody was talking about how you can have good, healthy, gender affirming sex along the way. You don't have to wait until all the puzzle pieces are, in a certain predetermined place, because that's
Right.
actually not how people work, right? Like trans or cis, we're never like finished.
Right.
And so there was lots of ways to express your desire and want to be connected. One of my favorite questions to ask people is, what do you want when you want sex with another person? And don't say an orgasm, because we all know you can get that by yourself, probably more reliably and faster, right? So
Right.
other
I
so
can
with
I can imagine, Dr. Emma, that that's a challenging question, especially if somebody's not really aware of their own physicality, their own physical body, or they don't even, uh, I guess, have time to themselves to please themselves to really figure out what they want. Like, how can someone even begin to answer that question? I wonder.
yeah. Well, and so I think that this is about, reframing sex doesn't have to be serious, right? It can be a serious topic. It's definitely a vulnerable topic, but sex is play for adults,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
And here's something that I do not work with children. I have all the respect in the world for people who work with children. You are a very, very special group of people. Um, but one of my dear friends who's a play therapist said, children only play when they feel safe, right? That was something that
That's true. Yeah.
you have to be safe in order to play. And then I was at the sex therapy training and they said sex is play for adults. And I was like, oh, wait, there's a math equation, right? Sex is play for adults. People only play when they feel safe. Okay, therefore we have to make sex feel safe,
Safe.
right? And it has to be emotionally safe. It has to be physically safe, but it also has to be emotionally safe, to be able to explore the different parts of your body. I've worked with veterans who've come back from, combat, and for some of them, they have had catastrophic, different catastrophic injuries
Mhm.
that left them unable to experience pleasure in the ways that they were trained by the culture they were supposed to experience pleasure. And
Mhm.
I was like, okay, if you're willing to go on this journey, guess what? The brain is amazing. And we can, you and your partner can go on this journey of figuring out where else can you experience pleasure in your body,
That's
right?
amazing.
And it was so cool. And it was like, I think that the biggest part about it is the destigmatization, right? And saying that
Yes.
you don't have to have sex like everybody else. Why are you worried about what's going on in other people's bedrooms, right? Like, worry about what's going on in your bedroom or not, or not going on in your bedroom. So we just kind of like bring down the stress level and bring down the threat level and say, like, this is play. That's
Mhm.
it,
I
right?
think the challenging part with that is because we still live in such a heteronormative society that if things aren't done the way the movie show or X-Tube shows or whatever if they're watching anything like that, we're all of a sudden not normal. And that's where we need people like you to step in and start making everybody normal just the way that they are. The way that they are is enough. And I love the idea of, the bedroom or intimacy is play because when you get to play, that's when you become creative and that's when you open up yourself and that's when you're able to explore yourself and feel comfortable and that whole playful state really opens up joy and excitement. And so I can definitely see how that would be really a great way to function going into a healthy relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's wonderful. I absolutely have at least the best job in the world for me. I think that it is incredible that I get to actually, we're going to record this and then I get to take the puppy out and then I'm going to go to my office and I'm going to see incredible couples who I can't wait to hear what's going on in their relationship this week. And I'm like, this is my life. What? Oh my gosh, here we are. Okay. This is so cool.
That is amazing. Yeah, that is so amazing. And also because if somebody's feeling comfortable in the bedroom with their partner, then that's just going to reflect back in all areas of their life.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I have a whole talk. I have a lot of CEO type, C-suite types, all these like brilliant, driven people. And I talk about, intimacy is strategic, actually, right? If you can learn how to be fully present and take the body armor off, right? You actually know what it feels like when it's off, then you're actually going to be better equipped when you have it on. You know, I
Yes.
I understand. I understand. You need to like go do battle in the boardroom. Got it. Not taking that away from you, right? And also, like that doesn't need to be the version of you that shows up in the bedroom. Like, please don't use the word optimize in the bedroom.
Right.
Like,
Right.
you know, I am, oh gosh, like I tease them too. And I'll give them a hard time and I'll be like, you're not going to talk about KPIs in here, please. Oh my
Right.
gosh, right? These
Yeah.
key performance
Simplify it.
indicators. Oh, no.
Yeah, they can end up being a turn off, right? So, Dr. Emma, how do we work through with our clients or with ourselves even with body with I guess body dysmorphic issues?
Yeah. I mean, so like the one thing, you know, I think the entry point is so important. And the entry point is that you are where you are, right? And it's, you know, I guess you could go on this journey to say, how did I get here? And maybe, the shoulds. Oh, I should have done this. My parents should have done that. Eh. I think that when we're having this conversation, start from where you stand, right? And just acknowledge to yourself, like, I want to explore this.
Hmm.
And then give yourself permission to be a beginner and to go in, right? Like there's that Buddhist concept that I love of the beginner's mind
Yeah.
and just receive and realize like nobody taught you this,
Hmm.
right? I mean, I thought of myself as a pretty like sexually savvy person and I just got my butt handed to me for 3 years going through this sex therapy training and going like, what? What is this? What do you mean? Like, huh? It's just these light bulb moments that kept happening. And so, when you think about like whatever you do that you are proficient in or passionate about, you've probably spent a lot of time being exposed to this thing, whatever it is,
Hmm.
right? And when I'm talking to, my business bros and everything, like it's so funny because I'm like, how many degrees do you have? How many internships did you do? Right? How many mentors do you have? How many coaching programs? How many books have you read? Like, for all to be as proficient as you are. Great. How answer the same questions, but now do it about relationships and sex. And they're like, maybe
Uh,
one, right? I think that the other piece is I'm so grateful. I have a really good friend who is about to publish a book. He works with chronic illness and sexuality, right? And like, so I think that that's the beauty. We haven't done a good job of making
right.
sure that everybody feels represented and that their sexuality is also validated and brought to the table. And we are getting better. Like there is more of that coming out, which I think is just so
I think that's
lovely.
excellent. I wish I could quote his Instagram name. I don't remember, but there's this gentleman I used to follow, and he has a colostomy bag. He had really bad Crohn's disease where he has a colostomy bag.
Hmm.
And he's young. I want to say maybe about 35, really handsome lad, buff. He's still working out and he's teaching people that even with the colostomy bag, you can exercise, you can work out. And I remember reading one of the comments, and this is good reflecting on what you just said right now. And someone, I guess you could say, ignorantly commented, "Oh, you have a girlfriend? Doesn't she get grossed out when you guys are intimate because of your colostomy bag?" And I saw that he just said, no, she loves me and we work around it. And it was just such a simple answer. But I thought, first I was defensive for him because I have a permanent disability. I have a urinary stoma. And at one point I had a urinary bag for 2 years
Hmm.
and because of that I really felt a lot of shame and I didn't I was embarrassed that I even had that, and so I felt embarrassed for him, but the way that he simply said in a couple sentences, it made me realize how many more people we need out there like him, to represent people with chronic illnesses or disabilities and to show that it's not gross, it's not shameful, like we find intimacy and we find ways to love and to be loved the way that we are.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh gosh. Yeah, I will have to see if I can find his account because
Me too.
that's
Mr. Oh gosh, I'll look it up after this.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll look it up, but it was really inspiring.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah. And like, if he was like, I never want to be sexual ever again, then fine. Like, you're allowed to say and set those boundaries. It's when other people, like that commenter, are like, well, you don't get to have this, or like, how is it that you get to have this from this kind of top down,
Right.
disgust approach where we're like, no, 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 no. That's not what we're doing here.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And just self-love is really important. I really try to talk as much as possible as I can on the socials about self-love because self-love is really what radiates within. And without that self-love, there's not there you can't heal unless you come closer to self-love.
Yeah, I absolutely believe that. 100%. 100%. We're so lovable.
Right? Or we're meant I mean, from the time you're a baby, right? You're lovable. You're just
Yes.
lovable inherently, and it's your birthright to be lovable and to be loved and to love. It's really beautiful.
Yeah, it really is. And sometimes we need a little bit of a reminder of who we are, right? To bring us back down, like to that self, because I think we can get really armored up. I know I have gotten really armored up, over the years and had to learn how to let that down. And so, like, it's okay when it happens. But the work is ongoing, right? The
It is
work.
the work really is ongoing. I'll say that. I'll second that. I'll three times that.
Yeah.
So, one last question here. When you help move people from shame into authenticity, when I see the word authenticity, I feel that a lot of people have their own meaning towards that. What is your meaning of authenticity?
Mm. So when I think about authenticity, I think about, you know, that it's like the mornings that you just kind of wake up and before you have done anything, like the world just feels right. Right? It's like that moment. Things are in alignment. You feel, I think that my bias is that people are naturally good, right? And
Absolutely.
that
Oh, yeah.
and that is our essence, that is our
Yes, it
nature,
is.
right? And so I think authenticity is light, right? And it is peaceful, and it is also grounded. And so, like, when I think about that in the morning, like where you open your eyes and you're just like, ah, like that's what I mean by authenticity. That's where I'm trying to get folks to, where they can just be who they actually are. I
Yeah.
tell my clients, all of you is welcome here. And I do mean all, right? Even the parts that you're not welcoming here, I'm welcoming here. And so that's what I mean by authenticity. It's that capital S self.
I love that. And you do have really welcoming energy, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you
Well,
so
I would like
much.
to read a poem that I wrote before this, and then afterwards you can tell us where our watchers and our viewers can find you.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, well, thank you so much. So this poem is called Only Love Leads the Way.
Mm.
Although it took some time to see it this way, love has the final say. Through sorrows and grief, through traumas and cycles of it, through breakthroughs and epiphanies, past the tears, past the finish line, past the rebirth. The greatest thing at stake is beauty. Beauty because without it, there is no path. The final beauty is love. And along the way, it was always the voice of love calling me to stay. For this I say, love has the final stay and the final say, since at the end, the only love leads the way.
Mm.
Almost felt like a Dr. Seuss book there for a
Oh,
little.
I love it though. I love that so much. Oh, can I please get a copy of that? That would be.
Absolutely. Well, it's dedicated to our energy, dedicated to you, and I wrote this specifically for this episode, so I'll send it to you, I'll email it
Oh,
to you.
thank you so much. This was such a beautiful conversation, and I'm just so grateful for the work that you're putting out in the world. It is really lovely.
Well, likewise, right? It takes two energies to become a magnet to each other. So thank you so much for it. Hey, Dr. Emma, so what's out of everything that we spoke about today, what is the biggest thought that you want the audience to leave with?
Mm. I think the number one thing that comes to mind is that you get to choose, right? And that choice gets to be part of your journey for as long as you want, right? Then your choices can change. I think that autonomy is my biggest driver. That's my highest value. And I definitely bring that to my work. And so when we talk about, what does it mean that I went through this? Or what does it mean that I want this? You get to decide what that means, right? And you get to decide what values and what beliefs you're bringing to that meaning. So that's my highest. If you don't remember anything else about me, please remember that I'm the autonomy girl, right? That's the thing. That's the
Absolutely love it.
biggest thing.
A lot of people don't realize that they do have the freedom to choose.
Yes. Yeah. And we choose how we respond. If nothing else, we can always choose how we respond to the things that
Absolutely
happen.
love it. So
Yeah.
beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank
How
you.
can our viewers, our watchers, and our listeners get a hold of you if they need to?
Oh, absolutely. Okay, so the best way to get a hold of me is you can go to my website, which I will, make sure that you can put in the show
It'll
notes.
be in the show
So,
notes for sure. Oh
yep.
yeah.
So that's soliloquy.co. That's my practice. I also host my own podcast, which is called The Intimate Philosopher. And so that is wherever you get your podcasts. And it's also on Instagram at the Intimate Philosopher Podcast. And you can, or if you just want to follow me, you can follow me at Emma Smith PhD. And so I'm going to be doing some really interesting things. I have a master class coming up about reigniting your desire for couples who are in like long-term and established relationships, but maybe that desire just kind of fizzles like the honeymoon stage, and people just say, oh, once it's over, it's over. And I'm here to tell you, no, you can get that back. Mm.
Come on, baby, light my fire, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes we have to light it again. It's fine. It's good.
Awesome, Dr. Smith, everybody here, Dr. Emma Smith. So it's such a pleasure connecting with you. Thank you so much, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you.
Oh, thank you so much. Yes, let's stay in touch for sure.
Thank you so much.